Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 1, 11 and 19 together. The government has made it clear that settler violence and the targeting and, on occasions, killing of Palestinian civilians is completely unacceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As calls for an urgent ceasefire in Gaza and an enduring peaceful resolution in the region continue, we must also remain opposed to the violence taking place in the West Bank. So to that end, does the Minister share my view that settlement building in the West Bank and across the occupied Palestinian territories is unacceptable, unlawful and must stop immediately?
Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The honourable lady will know that the position of the government is and has been for many years that these settlements are illegal. So I'm pleased to be able to confirm that for her.
And it's Cunningham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think the same question could be asked again. I mean, it is unlawful, but what is the government actually going to do about it? Does the Minister think that one day we might actually see some prosecutions in relation to these violations of international law?
Minister.
Well, on the point about settler violence, if that is the point he is referring to, we believe that it is not good enough just to arrest those who are responsible. They need to be both prosecuted and imprisoned.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem is that there are key figures in the Israeli government that are stoking this violence, with the Finance Minister publicly declaring that there are 2 million Nazis in the West Bank. What representation is the Secretary of State making to Israeli counterparts to demand a far more robust response to this violence?
Well, I can tell the honourable lady that the Prime Minister spoke about this directly with Prime Minister Netanyahu on the 5th of December, and he made it clear that we welcome Israel's recent comments condemning instances of settler violence, but that Israel must take meaningful action to stop it.
So, Secretary of State David Lammy.
Mr. Speaker, another day where the Foreign Secretary is unaccountable in the middle of a war that could get still even worse. West Bank violence is rising. Hezbollah have attacked Israeli positions and Israeli airstrikes have hit towns in South Lebanon. A widening of this conflict is in no one's interest and all parties must show restraint. While he's absent from this place, what steps is the Foreign Secretary taking to prepare for further escalation and deter all parties from full-blown regional war?
Minister.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, can I say that I fully understand that he wishes to have close contact with Lord Cameron as the Foreign Secretary, but he will be aware that he is in almost continuous contact with the Foreign Secretary by text and WhatsApp. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, if he was in any closer contact, it would probably be a civil partnership, Mr. Speaker. On the substantive point about the widening of the conflict, he will know that very early after October the 7th, the Prime Minister moved British military assets to the eastern end of the Mediterranean, firstly to try and ensure that if there were any arms being moved, we would know about that, but to have eyes on what was happening. And British diplomacy, along with our like-minded allies and friends, is devoted to ensuring that the conflict does not widen.
We now come to SNP spokesperson Alan Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK is providing logistical and surveillance support to the State of Israel. Has any evidence come to light which gives concern about the commission of war crimes in the West Bank or Gaza?
Minister.
Well, Britain is providing some overflight of Gaza to help us identify and help move forward the issue of recovering the hostages. I think that's exactly the right thing to do.
Smith.
So, to repeat the question, has any evidence come to light that gives concern about the commission of war crimes? And can the Minister assure us that any evidence that does come to light will be sent over to the ICC in response to their call for evidence under Article 86, which the UK is bound, surely, to cooperate with?
Well, the honourable gentleman will know that it's not just the government, it's many, many different organisations which are seeking to identify what is going on the ground, the extent to which international humanitarian law must be abided with, and any such evidence will undoubtedly be put before the relevant authority, the courts that he mentioned specifically, if such evidence is available.
Fiona Bruce.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, the White Paper includes 217 commitments to be delivered through to 2030. I have asked officials in the Foreign Office to work with colleagues across government to implement the commitments and determine the order of priority.
Fiona Bruce.
Thank the Minister for that reply and for his leadership on this excellent White Paper, and in particular in the run-up to the publication of it, that he clearly listened to calls for more targeted support and humanitarian relief for those left behind on account of their religion or belief. But the challenge now is to turn these innovative commitments into reality, and that will require a revised approach to development programming. Will he meet with me at a round table and with others to discuss this?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, it is always a pleasure to meet with my right honourable friend, who indeed has an office next door to mine in the Foreign Office. May I thank her for her comments about the publication of the White Paper and the way in which it has been received around the world. It does demonstrate renewed energy and vigour, and I hope reinvigorated leadership for Britain on these important matters, and of course value for money for our taxpayers.
Well, Mr
Speaker, the White Paper also talks about development diplomats. So could the Minister say how many will be trained and what will be the cost?
Minister.
Yes, she's quite right that we are increasing the number of development diplomats. I thought she mentioned something about water, but I may have misheard. But we are increasing the number of development diplomats. And the point about the White Paper is it sets out very clearly the aims and aspiration which Britain has to drive forward the SDGs and to make sure that we increase climate finance at this critical time. And she will be pleased to have seen that and will note that we are now driving forward that agenda.
Daniel Cutchin.